welcome to Closet Cosplay, the podcast where we help you create con-worthy cosplays on a closet budget. I'm LJ.
And I'm Michelle, and today we are actually starting out our lead in to Halloween, and we're starting this out with a suggestion from Hillary, who gave us a suggestion for Xena, the warrior princess, and I'm going to let LJ give you a good rundown on Xena.
So, I immediately knew who Xena Warrior Princess was because I actually grew up watching that wonderfully campy made-for-TV television show, and for some of our younger audience members, you may not be totally acquainted with Xena, and that's just a tragedy, but it's never too late. I'm sure there's other places that show it, but just to give you a brief rundown, Xena Warrior Princess was a live-action television show in the 90s, and it centered around its titular character, Xena, warrior princess, who actually was not a princess of anything, but that was a title given to her by her fellow soldiers when she was a warlord. I was gonna say warmonger, but it's probably close to the same thing. But the show itself follows her and her sidekick, we'll say Gabrielle, and she is a reformed warrior, and she's trying to go around helping the defenseless and innocent and flirting with war gods, and it was an amazing show. I absolutely loved it because she was this, and this is one thing that Hillary even pointed on, she was this like strong female protagonist role model when really there weren't a I won't say there weren't a ton, but it was a bit more of a novelty because Xena was actually a spin-off of an existing show called Hercules, so it was sort of the same idea. But I absolutely loved the character. Big fan of strong female characters, especially warrior types and generals and all sorts of stuff. I've RP'd my fair share of them because I absolutely love them. So I'm really happy that Hillary decided to pick this one's because I think it'll be a really good one, and it's definitely a really good one to start off our Halloween series with. Because Halloween is not exactly like doing cosplay, and a lot of people will confuse those two, but we're gonna get a little bit more into what those differences are throughout this episode and in the next episodes. But right now, why don't you tell us, Michelle, some of the things that you found for this costume in particular?
So Xena has just a general gladiator look. That skirt with like the spikes and the boots, these lace up boots with details, and it's almost like a corseted top, it looks like. So my first step was just to type in Xena costume on Amazon and just see if we got lucky, because sometimes you get really lucky and there's just a costume already out there. And especially for Halloween, like Eldra was talking about, yeah, it's different than cosplay. A lot of times in cosplay circles, you try to get away from the cheap costuming look and you want it to look more like that you've picked these pieces and, you're going to be in lights and people are going to take photos. So you want it to be like more detail oriented and that kind of thing. And with a Halloween costume, usually if you're going to a Halloween, if you're around our age, then you're going to be in a dark room. It's not so important that you're going to have this beautiful photo in the light or whatever. You just want a photo where people will be like, oh, that's Xena. That's cool. And that pretty much does it. So when I typed in Xena costume, there was one result on Amazon that popped up that was an actual Xena costume. There's another option we put in the Amazon list that is like just a general warrior costume that's kind of close, but it's not actually Xena labeled. So the one that was labeled Xena Warrior Princess costume looks really good. I mean, honestly, from a distance, probably up close, it's, you can tell that it's printed on details instead of it being leather. It's probably just fabric. But
it is recognizable.
It is very recognizable. And this costume includes the dress itself, boot covers, all of the armbands, and kind of it looks like a shoulder piece as well. And it comes with what do you call that disc?
It's a chakram.
There we go. And it comes with that as well. I think it's made out of fabric, but it is included in that costume. And one thing, Hillary gave us a pretty tight budget to work with. So one thing is this whole costume is within her budget range, and she could afford to get some little detail pieces as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to one of the things that, like I said, we're gonna be touching on some various differences between cosplay and Halloween and where they intermingle and where they kind of separate. And one of the things is, like she said, you're gonna be in a dark room for the most part if you're at a Halloween party or even just out trick or treating with your little sister, brother, or whatever. Like it's usually gonna be nighttime. Although I don't think there's many house to house trick or treating anymore now that I say that. At least not around here. But
Yeah,
used
this year's probably gonna look different than any other
Oh,
year anyway.
you're right. It's probably gonna be even more strict, so that's another thing to remember. But so, Hillary's, budget for $75, I think is totally reasonable for the idea, behind Halloween, in my opinion, is you need to be recognizable enough that people know who you are, and I think, with a costume that's pre-made like this, like, most people, if you are aware of Xena to some degree, like, this is going to be recognizable. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate. It doesn't have to be made out of leather. You just got to have that brown little gladiator dress and bangs, in my opinion, is what you
Right.
need to pull off Cena. So I think, setting yourself a low budget for a one night kind of thing where it looks good enough to be recognizable and isn't going to be a major loss if, somebody spills a drink on it or a little kid smears a candy hand on you, like, it's not gonna be that big of a deal.
Right. I think, like you said, I think you get the dress, you get the bangs, you get like some kind of arm cuff deal, and
Which
that accessory she has. I think you've pretty much nailed Xena.
which
Uh,
you have found some clip-on bangs, speaking of bangs.
yeah, yeah, I did. Well, Hillary says she would use her own, right? So,
Yeah,
we say like the wig makes the costume. Hillary's hair, honestly, looks very similar to Xena,
yeah,
and
so that
so
works.
yeah, so you get clip on bangs, boom, you got Xena,
Yeah, and clip-on
and
bangs are very affordable and cheap, and you don't have to worry about it, and it's one of those that definitely, if you're familiar with the way Xena looks, that was always kind of the one little weird thing. It's like this warrior princess, but she's got these cute little spunky bangs, and I just loved it. And as someone who wears bangs in real life, I'm always a fan of people in the bangs club, so I'm
there you
for it.
go. Yeah, these fringe bangs that we found, the piece that just clips in and hangs, and I'm sure you could cut it to the length you needed to. They're synthetic, but it's only $7.99, free shipping.
Yeah,
That's
and I
pretty good.
will say, usually that stuff does require anytime I've ever ordered something that had bangs on it, the bangs have always been really long. I have
Right.
always had to trim them. And so I will suggest if you do that, um, synthetic hair is very different than real hair, and it's usually much thicker. I'm going to give you some very brief tips on this. You want to have very nice sharp scissors. I actually used real hair cutting scissors on the bangs that I've used, or the fake synthetic bang wigs that I've had, and they work. But you will need to do it in much thinner sections than you would normal hair. I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube videos on it. Do not try to cut synthetic hair without some sort of guidance, because like video tutorial or something, because it looks very simple, you will mess it up very fast, and I tell you this from experience. So let me make the mistake for you. Go get some sharp scissors, and watch a tutorial if you need to. We haven't used these clip-on bangs before, so they might be totally fine. And the good thing about clip-on bangs is, I mean, if they're too long and you really don't want to cut them, just clip them further back
Further
on your
back.
hair. Yeah, like, so, like, there's easy ways around it. One other thing I wanted to touch on too, since this is a bought in bag, which is typically what I call these kind of costumes, because it's just in a bag and it comes to you. One thing that drives me crazy that I see people do all the time is they'll buy these costumes, these pre-made costumes, and they'll take them out of the bag and they'll be all wrinkled from the bag, and then they never try to iron it or straighten it in any kind, and it just looks really bad to me. um Now, a lot of these things are obviously not real material. They're not like a leather or even 100% cotton or anything like that, so they do get a little bit difficult to try to straighten out, but there are ways to do it. And I'm going to give you two different ways to do that that I have done that has seems to work. Number one, take a steamer to it. If you have a handheld steamer, you can do that. It'll help. You hang it up, like on the back of a door or something, and you steamer this, and then the actual weight of the costume will have it straighten out itself. The other way to do that is if you do not have a handheld steamer, put it in your bathroom, like hang it up next to the towel rack or something, and take a really hot shower. and make sure the door is closed and just create a steam room basically for this item, and it will do the same thing. Or 3, depending on the fabric, and you may just have to look this up, you can take a damp, not wet and not moist, but a semi-damp towel, fold it over a couple times or once, whatever you feel comfortable with, lay it on top of the costume and iron it at a low heat. And that will prevent it for that. So you're not ironing the costume directly, you're ironing the towel on top of the costume. And that will help you get any of those wrinkles out. And it may not be 100%, but it will look a ton better than just like this bally wrinkledness of these costumes that come pre-made.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people are like last minute pop in the Halloween shop, grab whatever costume.
Oh, I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah. And hey, totally fine. But those are good tips because, yeah, if you got, a day before you're going to your party, you can at least try to make it look a little nicer.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, there's some very simple things that will make it not look so cheap, and making sure that it's not wrinkled is almost at the top of the list for me, because you can have a super nice costume, but it's all wrinkled and it throws it completely off, in my opinion.
Right. So if you don't want to go, the costume, we did find different options. Okay. So number 1, we said the armbands would make it for us, right? We have a couple different armband options. One being, and this is LJ and I's preferred one, a armlet armband armor shrug shoulder armor thing.
Oh,
I don't know.
It's called. I always called it like a single pauldron. It's just like the one pauldron. I love the look of that stuff. Like I have it in. If I can wear it in video games, I wear that kind of stuff in video games. Like I have one in real life that I used it for Shrike. Shrike had a single pauldron that went up her arm. That was one of my old RP characters that I played for Vampire Lore.
Yes.
I think they look great. And while it's not 100% accurate to Xena, if you just want to dress it up a little, go for it.
You're going to feel like a strong, independent woman in this, I feel like, because it's like you're wearing little... That's just...
It's great.
That's just fun. And our other option, if you don't want the full shoulder pauldron deal, would be, they're called bracers. And I did put a set of bracers into the Amazon list that we will link. But also, if you just search for, like, bracers, leather bracers, or, anything like that, you can find a cheaper option. I think the ones I pinned were $22.98, so not bad, and they have detailing on them.
Yeah. One thing I will say, this isn't necessary, but I have done this before. With the stuff that's printed on, and like these bracers that are printed on and stuff too, if you really want to have something just a little bit extra, you can get a gold metallic paint pen, and just like over any of the gold pieces, just run that fabric or gold paint pen over that way. So if you do, or if you are in a situation where you're going to be taking photos and stuff, or even if you're at a club in this outfit, the light will hit that stuff and it'll look really cool. But that's just a small detail if you really want to go to that distance for it.
Gives it a little shine and shimmer as you move.
Which is always fun. Yeah. And that's one of the things too about this costume that I think is a really good pick for a Halloween costume, is it's going to be very easy to move in, because Halloween is typically a night where you're doing a lot of walking around, you're doing a lot of dancing, if you got kids or little brothers or sisters or something, you're picking kids up and doing all sorts of stuff. So it's like you want to have something that's not entirely like too constricting. And I think this one is going to be a good pick.
Absolutely. The other things that we picked out, if you're not going to go with the one costume, would just be a corset, like a detailed corset. I don't think it has to be her exact detailing, but just any kind of corset that has detailing. I think the one I picked kind of has just lines down the front. It just has a good detail on it. A lace-up boot. I think also, most women down here in the South own riding boots. I think a pair of riding boots is just fine for this costume. If you had some. And then the other thing, we found like this, I think it's a Velcro gladiator skirt that you could just Velcro around a pair of shorts. I think that's
Yeah.
all it is.
Yeah, like, even if you just wanna go simple, like I said, you don't have to do much, and this is one of the things that I think is a much clearer distinction between, say, a costume for a convention and a costume for Halloween, is when you're doing something for Halloween, you're typically doing something that is more present in the general population's idea of pop culture than you are like if you're doing a very niche character from an anime or a comic book and you go to a convention, there's a pretty good chance some people will know who you are and maybe even most people will know who you are. If you're that same niche character going out to a Halloween party, people are probably not going to recognize you. And that kind of like for me, I've mentioned it before, part of the fun of cosplay and stuff is like being recognized. And so if you go to all this trouble with a costume that you know and your friends would probably know, and you go to a Halloween party and nobody recognizes you, it's going to kind of take the wind out of your sails. So I think that's another reason the Xena is a good one, and why you can go as simple as having a brown gladiator dress with some boots and a freaking spray painted frisbee, because that is a character that is in general consciousness for the pop culture in America at least. And so you don't have to be so exact because there are some very telling things for that character that are very immediate. It'd be like Cruella Deville, you just have a Dalmatian coat and two different hair colors. You could have everything else wrong with that character, and everybody
Right.
is going to know who you are. I think that is very true with Xena too. Brown little gladiator skirt, get the hair right, like, and you're
Right.
pretty much golden, honestly. And so I think that's one of the big differences between Halloween costumes and cosplay costumes is typically you want to be at the forefront of public consciousness when it comes to pop culture. And I think that like you're saying is we've got all these options here. Is no, do you want to be exact and still affordable with the costume that's a pre-made costume, or do you want to get these pieces that hint just enough at that character that that character is still recognizable, but it may even be cheaper for you, and it may be pieces that are offhand and maybe you're reusable in your normal closet cosplay sort of stuff.
Absolutely. And going alongside that, you mentioned a spray paint frisbee. Let's talk
Oh,
accessories for a second. So
let's.
we did find a costume sword, just a long Roman costume sword. I think it's $5, which is just a little added fun, right? You can play around with your posing and stuff, and obviously have fun with that at a party. And then the
Because,
other,
like, unlike a normal convention, you can actually have a weapon.
boom,
We never get to talk about weapons on here because I'm normally one of those that just strays on the side of caution and is like, just don't take a weapon, just don't take a weapon with you to a convention. But
true.
Halloween, nobody's paying that much attention. It's fine. So yes, get yourself a gladiator sword this time. Get yourself a little chakram. You can do it.
So much fun. And for the chakram, let's talk about that for a second. So you can't really just like straight up find that. However, my thought was get yourself, if you guys have ever seen, they have these frisbees, but they're open in the center. So they're basically just a frisbee ring. And I think you could find those at like the Dollar Store, Walmart for cheaper even than it is on Amazon. But they have a 2-pack on Amazon for $10. You should get you some spray paint and spray paint that sucker, and I think it works just as well.
Which I think was a really good idea. I am not a frisbee person. I've gone frisbee golfing once, and it was a terrible situation. But I did not know that these existed, so I think that was really good. I saw the picture that she added on the list, and I was like, "Oh wow! Like this looks exactly like one of her chakrams," because she has two different ones, at least from my recent memory. And one of them is just that same shape, which it's like open in the middle, spray painted silver with some like little gold triangles. You can just do all of that with spray paint or paint pens or whatever, and it'd
Yeah.
probably be a lot more formidable than the foam one that comes with the pre-made costume, for example.
Yeah, and you can have fun with tossing that around out back, when you're
Yeah,
bored.
exactly. Functional, functional costume piece.
There you go.
It can't get better than that.
Absolutely. I think we did pretty good on this one. I think we nailed everything, didn't we? Have we forgot to mention anything?
We got the boots, we got the accessories, we got the hair, we got the actual overall costumes, we got the uh, optional pieces.
Right.
And then if you can talk a friend into being Gabrielle, that's even better.
Boom. Oh, I did want to touch on something we talked on before we started the episode where you said, and I think you kind of mentioned, but another thing about Halloween, right? You play these like characters that maybe not everybody is going to recognize. They're super popular. the thing with this costume and, you know, other types of costumes you could do, if you're being like a specific character that could also be interpreted as like a genre of characters. So say this Xena costume, yeah, some people will know you as Xena. And for other people that would have no idea, you can just be like, oh, I'm just a gladiator. And it would
Yeah.
work just as well. See, and it's like, that's not really so much a con thing, but almost at Halloween, you can be this super specific character, but as long as you can generalize it as well, then you kind of got both sides covered.
Yeah, I think, and I've personally done this a couple times, and I'll give just a brief example. Several years ago, I was a character from a video game called Left 4 Dead, which, for those of you who don't know, it was like a 4-player co-op zombie shoot 'em up game. And so I wore what the girl wore. I had like I made a little medi pack that looks just like how the medi pack in the game, and I had like fake blood and stuff like that on me. And the people who recognized me for who I was, and the people who didn't, all I had to say was, "Oh, I'm a zombie hunter," and it immediately clicked. And you can honestly do that with a lot of characters. Most characters are not entirely original concepts. They all fit into some sort of archetype. So, zombie hunter, warrior, gladiator, and that's where Xena fits. If people don't know who you are, you can just be like, "I'm a gladiator. I'm an Amazon." And those are things that most people are going to know the idea and get the gist of what you're going for.
Right. Are there any other differences we forgot to mention as far as con and Halloween costumes, or are we going to save that?
I'm sure that there's going to be some more that we get into in detail, but we did just kind of give you guys a brief sort of overview of sort of some of the things that we're going to be talking and getting into. And that's like where your priorities should lie with Halloween costumes versus where your priorities should lie with convention costumes, maybe some of the etiquette that changes when it comes to Halloween versus um, con. If there's anything else that you guys would be curious about hearing what the differences are, we're going to go into some of those ourselves, but we're always open to what people might also be interested in, like what goes into doing a Halloween party, what goes into the differences between, or altering a convention costume to fit a Halloween idea. There's a ton of things that we're going to be getting into, and we're going to try to talk about a costume on each one of them, but we may do some more topic central things like we've done in the past. But we'll see. I'm excited for this Halloween, even though it's probably going to be a lot different than any other year. I'm still going to do it, and you guys will definitely know when we decide what our costumes are going to be, because those are
Yeah.
definitely going to be their own episodes.
We are going to have fun with this one. It is going to be a blast. Halloween is not getting canceled as far as I am concerned. I'm still going to dress up. So
Halloween lives on in the hearts of everyone, in my opinion.
yes, very excited for Halloween season for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, guys, you can find our suggestion form on our Facebook page. Just press the little contact us button in the top right hand corner, and that will take you right to it. If you have any problems finding our suggestion form, you can always email us at closetcosplaypodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you guys, even if you just want to email us and say, hey, love what you guys are doing. Our hearts just burst at hearing from you guys. It makes us so happy.
Definitely.
But I guess that's all for us this time.
Have a spooky end of August.
Yes. And we look forward to chatting with you guys next time.
All right. Until then.
Bye.
Bye.